Today, we're going to be talking about the mind of a covert narcissist. I know this is a topic so many of us are invested in because we have been trapped in a narcissistic relationship. And the most common type, I think, that fools us is the covert narcissist. We end up thinking that we have met somebody really wonderful, someone super sympathetic, somebody who understands our heart. For those of you who followed my story with Caesar, you know that you may have noticed, I don't know if you picked up or not, but he was definitely very covert. You know, when I first met him, I was in therapy at the time, and shortly after I met him, I remember saying to my psychologist, I was in treatment at the time, and I said I had never met someone who made me feel more safe than Caesar did. So what happens with a covert narcissist that makes us think that we have met somebody so fabulous, so wonderful? How come we miss the fact that we have met a very toxic individual who has fooled us? And I think part of the first problem we have is that we typically assume that narcissists are all the same. That if you've met one, that you've met all of them, but they're actually not. There's at least 5 different subtypes, and that I think the hardest subtype to identify is the covert narcissist. We often end up thinking that if we meet the braggart, you know, the grandiose, larger-than-life individual, that's the typical narcissistic person. Oh, it's frozen on your end. I know what the problem is. Sorry, I'm fixing something real quick here. I apologize for this break. I do this a lot. I don't know. I end up forgetting to put my phone, after I set up the camera, I always forget to put the phone back onto Wi-Fi. So it's on my, there we go. Okay. Yeah, it glitched, guys, on YouTube or TikTok because I had you on my cellular plan, not on my Wi-Fi, but I'm back. You guys should be able to see me now. But we've been talking about covert narcissists, why we get into these relationships and we don't realize we've met a covert narcissist. And it's interesting because now that I've been watching for it, I've noticed several times that I've met somebody that I thought was really, really wonderful. I start to talk to this person, whether they're a friend or even somebody I maybe have some romantic interest in. And I've really watched what's happened that led me to think that this person was safer than they actually were. What the process was of how I met them, what was the initial take on them, what did they do that made me feel really understood and supported, and then how did I pick up the fact that this person was narcissistic and that they were not as safe or sympathetic or empathetic or self-reflective as I initially thought. So I want to first, before I get into this, what I missed, I want to talk about that. But before I get into it, I want to just review again narcissism. You know, what is narcissism? Why do we get confused around who's a narcissist and who's not a narcissist? What even maybe what has happened? So narcissists are individuals who, for whatever reason, and I know that there's a lot of debate on which came first. Are they people who've had a very troubled childhood? Maybe they've had trauma in their life. Maybe they're individuals who are genetically predisposed to narcissism. Maybe they've had a family structure that has led to narcissism. We do know that there is 2 family makeups that tend to create narcissists, but I also think that there's a strong genetic component. If you've ever noticed that narcissists tend to run in families, that if you found one and you look back through their family history, you're going to see other manifestations of narcissism. Now, people could say, well, that's because of the family makeup. They're that way because the parents raised them, or the culture is that way that's really precipitates that, or I'm sorry, that really encourages that. So what research has found is that there's sort of 2 dynamics that lead to people being more vulnerable to being narcissistic. One is the overindulging family, where the parents treat the child or children as if they can do no wrong. Their needs come first. There's no delayed gratification. And when the child makes a mistake, often the parents will excuse that and then blame other people for that child's errors. You know, it's not that the kid didn't study or didn't take the test seriously, it was the teacher asked the wrong questions. So if you have a family that's really overindulging, being super kind of like put this person, think of it this way. everybody in a family needs to learn that you're not the only person in the room, that there are other people's needs and situations that are also competing. And that part of becoming human is learning how to delay gratification, how to delay getting what you need against the needs of everyone else. And in some families, what happens is that that's not ever taught. The child is always primary, and they end up feeling like they're the only one in the room. You'll even see the parents do that. Like the parents will, whatever that kid needs, that parent will sacrifice everything in that moment to meet that child's needs. That's totally unrealistic. You're essentially telling them that other people don't matter, that there are no other priorities and no one else exists except for them and themselves in that moment. That's a really bad message to give to children. And if it's done habitually over a long period of time, this is a person who's going to grow up particularly pretty self-absorbed and really struggle to connect to anyone else, to even see other people exist. So we do know that that is one family system style that does cause narcissistic behavior or tendencies in some people. But I also think, like I said before, that there's a strong genetic component that makes some of us more predispositioned to it than other people. And thank you so much for joining me today. I noticed that TikTok, my numbers are kind of low. If you guys would do me a big favor and like, or even maybe send this video to somebody else who might need it today. Maybe you know somebody who's struggling with a narcissistic relationship. Maybe they even have met a covert and they don't know that they're in a relationship with a covert narcissist. This might be something that they would find super helpful to help them, first of all, identify that they're not in a safe relationship, but also why it's so easy to miss covert narcissists, and then what to do about it if they're in a relationship like that. And I'm going to make sure that I save at least a good 20 minutes or so to take your questions today, kind of whatever you want to know about anything related to psychology, related to relationships, but it's certainly related to narcissism. And thank you so much, guys, for joining me. I see so many of my friends back on TikTok who are here that I hang out with every week. I missed you guys last week. I was on vacation, took a week off, got away, hung out with Ro from Roller Coaster of Love. Her and I had a wonderful time, although I have to say, where we stayed was in Mexico, was hot. I mean, the level of humidity was such that, it was almost unbearable to go out. We tried to either go out early in the morning or go out later at night because it was just, it was so hot. And I hear in Austin, my kids told me that Austin had a fantastic week of 70 degrees weather, and I really missed it. I missed great weather here in Austin for super hot weather in Florida. I'm sorry, not in Florida. I saw someone from Georgia, which made me think of, I don't know why I thought of Florida seeing Georgia, but hey, welcome to Georgia. So glad that you're here. But anyway, it was hot. July's always hot in Mexico. Like, what do you expect, right? It's near, where I stay is 11 degrees off of the equator. So imagine that, 11 degrees. So literally, in fact, the sun's like beating down on you. I got I got a good tan without trying it. But anyway, I missed you guys. I'm super glad to be back here with you all and talking about how to heal from toxic relationships, how to recognize, how to spot dangerous relationships, how to get out of it. All of that. I'm so excited to be able to share that with you. I know I've not been posting tons of content on YouTube and Facebook this last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And the reason is most of you may not know that I posted this massive 29 series telling my whole life story around the guy that I got into a relationship with. Basically what I was doing, I was reviewing this book called Love You More. For those of you who didn't know, I wrote Love You More and published it in February of 2022. And it's the full kind of uncensored story of how I met, married, and got scammed by a gold digger. So if you're interested, and really he's a narcissistic sociopath. So if you're interested in learning more about what actually happened, what was it like, and there are details that I shared in this 29-part series on TikTok that happened to be actually let me start over. There's stuff that's in the book that I didn't share. And of course, there's some things I shared in the series that I didn't talk about in the book. So if you guys are interested, please go to TikTok. It's called the Gold Digger series. And you can hear the whole complete thing of what happened. It's been fascinating. I'll tell you, a lot of criticism. I've gotten so smeared there for doing this, which, there's a part of me that's kind of happy to have that happen, because it, first of all, gives me the insight into those who really struggle to understand what narcissistic abuse is. It also helps you understand what you're encountering in the world, the kind of reaction that you're getting from others, the fact that they don't understand why people get trapped in these relationships. It gave to me insight into the blindness we have about abuse in general, that we sort of assume that everybody has full access to be able to come and go into relationships, and that we don't understand much about a trauma bond. We don't really understand a whole lot about the fact that this is essentially a cult of two, that when you get into these relationships, you've been brainwashed. So it's given me a sense of where we as a society are struggling to support victims. And if they're not able to support me, they're certainly not going to support you. So I heard all about how much how dumb I was, what terribly low self-esteem I must have had, how my late husband must be turning in his grave, and my sons must be super embarrassed of me. So it's fascinating hearing people's comments. So, and by the way, so many of you guys are talking to me, and I really appreciate you being here, and I'm glad you're free. I'm really glad that you're out of this toxicity, because don't you agree that everybody who's gone through this, I mean, could you ever, before it happened to you, relate to it and even believe that it could happen? Somebody just sent me a long letter today. It was a man. A man wrote to me about his experience, and the woman he met is so toxic that there's actually been death threats around her. There's been real life and death fears and concerns about this person. They've been so dangerous. So it's difficult. Yeah, Michelle, it often takes us 7 tries to get out, 7 separate tries. And I know that there's so much, people love to pile on guilt and shame and say that you're weak for not being able to do that, but they don't know all of the real intimidation that you fear, the real threat that you're constantly being faced with, and even the emotional blackmail that occurs. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, well, in my story, with the fact that I had a company that I made him co-owner with, and that the money was sunk into Mexico following Mexican law, they assumed I should have, when I had that break, I should have just pulled the money out and then, absconded back to the United States. The fact that I couldn't do that would have been breaking the law. I wouldn't have been allowed to do that. And besides, it was in property. So how do you just get rid of all of that and find a way? I would have actually had to show up at a notary, which is not the same as a notary in the United States. That's a very serious deal. Show up at a notary, claim, somehow suggest them to ignore there's a co-owner in this business, like they're going to do that, they're not going to do that, and then walk out with cash. And it's not happening. Anybody who's ever done any property buy and sell in Mexico would know it doesn't happen like that. So it's easy. What I've noticed is this, and I know I'm not talking about covert narcissists, I'll get to this in a second. It's really easy for us to make all sorts of assumptions about something we've never personally experienced. It's easy for us to sit comfortable in our house, in our chair, watching a little video, and then figuring out that what we would have done better or different if we had been that person. But it's not until you get into that situation that you really realize how confusing it is, and how blind you are, and how little information that you're actually getting. It's very, very difficult to imagine the things that we're facing. Yes, Jews, like you're facing right now, that you're living in that right now, and you're struggling to understand even what is real. I mean, people said, oh, he's cheating, you should have left. Yeah, but after I found out the initial piece of cheating, there really wasn't firm evidence from then on. I didn't know he was still ongoing cheating. I didn't know that. I couldn't find the proof. So we end up feeling like we need the proof, and we miss what's most important, which is asking ourselves, how safe do I feel in this relationship? Can I show up as myself? Does this person make it okay for me to ask for what I need? And does this person make me feel safe to even bring up any issue that I'm having? We don't share those pieces. And those are the things that we really need to be paying attention to, that says to us that we're in a safe situation. If any of you are in a situation like that, or leaving one right now, and you want help healing, please consider joining the Healing Strong 12-week group coaching program. It starts, Lisa, Sunny, and I are co-hosting it. where we have one spot left for August 22nd. We have a full opening right now for 8 people in September 5th. So if you're looking for support and help working through your anger, your guilt, your grief, even making sense of what happened, how do you let go of potential, how do you like really stay no contact, please consider becoming a part of this 12-week live group coaching session. It's going to be on Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. So it's live. You work with just a small group of other people. We actually have a community piece so you'll be able to get to know these other people. This last group we just wrapped up, they actually become friends. A couple of them have now met in real life, which is so cool. So if you're looking, kind of feeling isolated and you want help really working through all of this, check out Healing Strong. It starts August 22nd. It has 1 spot left. And then August 5th has 8 spots. So only 9 spots. We have a very limited amount. Okay, so talk about a covert narcissist. Covert narcissists do not present as a braggart, grandiose, larger-than-life person. They really don't. They present themselves as very supportive. They'll come across as sympathetic. You'll feel like you meet somebody who's a kindred spirit. And initially, there's really kind of like almost an attraction, a magnetic piece to this person. You know how a grandiose narcissist confidence is so larger than life, and it makes you feel really wonderful and special to be in that person's presence? Now, let's admit it, guys. One of the reasons why we really like these people is because when they see us, which they really don't see you, but when it feels like they see you and they've noticed you or they praise you for something, you just like all like become bright and shiny. It just feels like the sun has come out and you're the moon and they've lit you up. It's just an amazing experience. But the problem with covert narcissists is that they don't do that so much. They don't do this. They're not like taking center stage and bragging. They come at you more soft and sympathetic. And often they'll lead with a problem. And that's what throws us off, because there's no way a grandiose narcissist is ever going to lead with a problem. They're not. They're going to like tell you how you should be doing what they're doing, or why are you not wearing what they're wearing, or why are you not, if you like, I think of a college professor, why are you not taking their class because they're the best professor in this topic? So grandiose narcissists lead just really loud and proud and strong, but a covert narcissist doesn't. A covert narcissist often leads with something that connects with you around your sympathy. They make you feel like you've met somebody similar to yourself. Like maybe you're going through a real rough patch with a friend, and then they'll start to share with you how they're also struggling with a friendship as well, and that they can kind of relate to you. Or maybe you're in transitions and starting a new job or considering leaving a job. They'll tell you about how they're struggling with their job as well. And they may even, here's the other thing that really throws us off, they may even lead with a failure. Like, for example, one of them I met told me how he was really struggling at work and how lonely he was. And it made me feel like I had met somebody going through something similar to me, because I had just moved to Austin and didn't know anybody. So I really felt like I had somebody who kind of connected and related to me. What we don't know is that this is a predominant role they're going to play, that they are either the biggest martyr or they're going to be the biggest victim. And yeah, they often come off as the nicest person in the world. Not only a nice guy, because I don't want to just pick on men, but they'll come off as the nicest person. Because by the way, in my life, I've met quite a few narcissistic women. I think we need to talk more about that, about what a narcissistic woman looks like, how she is just, in some ways, I have had some of you share this with me, and I would agree with you. A narcissistic friendship is almost more devastating than a romantic relationship, partly because we just think that we can count on them for support, and we often share things with them that we don't really share with other people, especially maybe with the opposite sex. So sometimes we let them in closer and get to know us better, and then they, of course, then turn around and use those things against us. So a female narcissist are super toxic. I don't know what it's like on a guy's side, because I do know you guys, men, reach out to me to share your stories that you've been at. Like I said, the one that wrote me a letter and said this woman is scary, frightening, like terribly blackmailing, terribly scary. So, Chrissy, it's so great you're moving to Austin. Yeah, that would be fun to meet up with you. That would be great. But yeah, there is they can be just as terrorizing for men as they can be for women. Yeah, Mark is telling us how he'd met a sociopathic wife, and how terrorizing that has been for her as well. So yeah, we don't talk enough about women and meeting women as friends or meeting women as partners, how confusing that is, how scary it is, how intimidating it is. But a covert narcissist is going to lead with something that's going wrong. They're going to lead with something that's going wrong. So that's the tricky part, is how do you determine that this is really a person who's just being vulnerable, which that's cool, right? I mean, to build a really strong relationship, we need vulnerability, versus somebody who's actually sharing it as a way to kind of hook you, to get you connected with you in a way to make you feel trusting, to let your guard down. So this is what I suggest that you do. In fact, Christy, you just asked a fantastic question. How do you trust anybody? And I think that's a fair question, but I also think it's particularly important when we meet people who might possibly be a covert narcissist. I think we need to move away from blindly trusting people to making people earn our trust. And I'm going to tell you right straight out, as a person who blindly trusted, my philosophy was, until recently, I would trust you until you proved me wrong. But that's the wrong mentality. I do not recommend that you approach the world from the standpoint, I'm going to trust people until they prove me wrong. Because here's the thing that happens with that. When you trust a person and assume they're good and assume that they mean well by you, and you're going to wait until the shoe drops, until you retract that, you've already allowed them to hurt you. And in fact, people who are predatory, and I'm not just talking about narcissists, but also anybody predatory, psychopaths, sociopaths, paranoid group, anybody like that, they're looking to see how trusting you are. And the fact that you are going to just blindly trust somebody without having any proof of their trustworthiness, you've shown them that they're gullible and vulnerable. That's what you guys picked up in my story with the gold digger. You picked up, which bugged a lot of you when you were listening to the story. It's like, why did I assume good things about this person? Why do I assume the best, in fact? Why did I assume he was well-intended when there was nothing to base on anything that he was well-intended with me? Because here's the thing. I think a lot of us have a wrong mindset. We live in a world that's not actually real. Yeah, a boss can be narcissistic. Absolutely, Fatima. Absolutely. But we live in a mindset that is really, really wrong. And the mindset is that the world's a basically good place. Yeah, we assume the best in people. I agree with you, Kate. We assume that the world's a basically good place. I want you to stop doing that. That's what you got irritated with me in that story, was I kept assuming Caesar was either a victim and he didn't know better and he needed saving, or I assumed the world was basically a good place, and it's not. Consider the fact, for example, that I started to have a new saying that I'm going to just keep broadcasting far and wide. It is that narcissists are rare. It's not 1% of the population that's narcissistic. It's way higher than that. It's way higher than even the best estimates is 5 to 7%. It is way higher than that. The reason we don't know how many narcissists there are in the world is because they don't come in for treatment. And even when they do, and even when they do come in for treatment, we rarely diagnose them because it's not a reimbursable condition or disorder. I got to stop saying condition. It's not a condition, it's a disorder. It's not a reimbursable disorder. Insurance will not pay for someone having a narcissistic personality disorder. So as a result, clinicians are advised and encouraged not to diagnose it. So they don't come in for treatment, so we're not seeing them in the office. And when they, for whatever reason, rarely make it into the office, we typically don't diagnose them. So they're not really getting the proper tag to know what the count is. Okay, so that's telling you that this is way underseen, it's undertreated, and we don't really have good census of how many people it's affecting. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. If I had to make an educated guess what percentage of the world I think is narcissistic, oh my, I don't know. I think it's, maybe at least 10%, maybe 20% of the world, unfortunately, is narcissistic. But you're not even adding on to the top of that, the sociopaths, psychopaths, and the paranoid group. as well as the people who are struggling with really difficult, untreated borderline personality disorder. So you're now starting to think that there's a lot of people out there that's very exploitive, very exploitive. So if we come into the world with assumption, this is what I do now. When I look at a new person, I remind myself roughly 20% or more are not safe. And I don't know anything about this individual. There's no reason for me to assume this person is a good person. I need to watch, pay attention, observe, and see what they do that makes me feel safe. Is this a person who listens to boundaries? Is this a person who can respect my no and hears no? For example, somebody wrote me a letter. I've been getting so many letters from men who think I want a new relationship based on my story of the gold digger. First of all, even that's ironic. Why would I want to meet somebody who wants to meet me because they heard that I was a rich, white, dumb woman who got into a toxic relationship? And you're going to think that I want to start a new relationship with somebody who's half my age, my kid's age, and you're on an island or you're in another country without a green card? I mean, it's so exploitive from the beginning, like that just is red flags everywhere. But anyway, so somebody wrote me and I said, no, thank you. I'm not interested in anything like this. And so today this person responded, says, and then attacked me, massive attack, which is funny. It's like, you just said that you wanted a relationship. Now I'm a piece of crap because I didn't respond. See, pay attention to that. Notice how they handle conflict or when they don't get their way. Notice how they treat people who hold less power than you do. How do they treat the wait staff? What do they do with the cashier when that cashier makes an error in the addition or gives back the wrong change? Notice what happens when they have to wait or they're trapped in traffic. These are the types of things that are going to tell you a whole lot about this person. So what I typically do these days is that I just generally don't make any assumptions about anybody. I don't necessarily invite them into my life, but I also don't necessarily not get to know them. I'm reserved. I take my time in getting to know somebody and I pay attention to everything about that individual. How do they talk about other people? How do they characterize their past relationships? Watch how they describe why they broke up and what they think of that past partner. How involved are they with their kids' lives? Are they involved at all? Notice what they do with their parents, their mothers, their elderly people in their life. Notice who they respect and why. Watch what they're watching on TV and YouTube. What are they telling you and what do you think they're not telling you? What are the gaps in their history or even the gaps in their day that you do know about or you don't know about? What we so often do is we fill in the blank with our best assumptions. We fill in the blank with ourselves without realizing that we've attributed good qualities to the person that have come from ourselves, and it only really describes ourselves because we make the assumption that everybody is like us. So when you meet a covert narcissist and you hear this sympathetic story or you hear about how life's not treating them well, be curious about it. Don't make any assumptions this is a good thing or a bad thing, but be really curious about it. Like, how do they feel about it? Because here's one of the things you're going to notice that's super odd, that makes no sense, and it's a big warning. Oh, thank you so much for that gift. A big warning sign that you've met somebody who's toxic is they're not very upset about the bad things happening in their life. They'll tell you really horrible things like relationships gone wrong or big health scares, and they'll act kind of nonchalant about it. That is a warning flag. That's a person who's getting profound secondary gains. Do you guys know what that word means? Secondary gains means, okay, primary gains is like, so if you were sick, let's take my son with cancer, my son who had leukemia. We were all upset about it. I frankly didn't want anybody ever to know what was going on in my life because I didn't want their sympathy and I certainly want their pity. It was too much. I felt overloaded by it. So even to say, yeah, he's sick, and then like, oh my goodness, what's that? I'm like, I don't have time for this. I need to get to the hospital. I am so caught up with what's going on there. But when you meet somebody who's more like toxic, what they'll do is they'll lead with it. Oh yeah, my son's sick. And then next thing you know, like, really, what's happening? And then you start to oh, you won't, they create drama around this thing. And this, like, they make it a big deal and they're sucking you in and making you feel really, really bad and really invested. And every time you meet them, you get the next saga. Now, I know, I want to separate for a second. I want to stop and say, people who get out of trauma or an abusive relationship often do that in the beginning, but we're really actually not seeking sympathy and we're not actually seeking attention, we're seeking validation. And there's a big difference between those two things. The first wants you to be all caught up in the drama and the chaos of whatever catastrophe is happening. The second group feels stunned and shocked and can't believe it happens, feels like their credibility, they feel so ashamed, they feel so embarrassed, and they want somebody to say, yeah, that's really a bad thing to have happened to you. I can't believe they want validation. So please tease those two groups out. They're not the same and they're not looking for the same thing. You guys know what I mean, right? When you've been around somebody who's just like drama seeking, that's what I would call it, drama seeking, where they act like everything's a crisis and it's a perpetual problem, one thing after another, and it's like they're thriving off the chaos. Watch for that individual. That individual is a person who's seeking a form of supply. That's what this is. It's a form of supply. And instead of supply being all admiration of, oh, you're the best at this, and I've never met anybody like you before, the supply is your sympathy. They're looking for your sympathy. And they want you to be all caught up with their drama. Now, here's the second thing that will tell you this is a covert narcissist or a toxic person. When you share something similar back, like you say, oh yeah, my mom's been really sick too, they'll jump over it as if you've never said it. They'll literally act like it didn't exist. It's not happening for you. You'll feel invisible around them. So there's all this draw towards them and their drama and their difficulty, but there is not the equal care or investment or reciprocity in your struggle or your pain or your issues. It's as literally as if the whole world has to spin around their trauma, their difficulties, and yours is meaningless, and they'll even gaslight you. Well, it's not the same. Or, it's your mom, it's not me. You know what I'm saying? They'll do something kind of like makes you feel really, really stupid or silly. Like, for example, here's an example with Caesar. When I met up with Caesar, and for the first period of time, for any length of time, I found out that Amazon had sent me a cancellation notice that my Christmas gift to myself, because Brad had passed away, and Brad always got me really lovely, Brad always bought me really lovely Christmas gifts. Sorry about that. I don't know even who was calling me, but Brad always buy me these lovely Christmas gifts. And I decided, because it was the second year since he was gone, that I was going to give myself a really lovely Christmas gift. It was actually a camera. And then Amazon emailed me to say, sorry, that order can't be fulfilled. We've canceled it. And I found out a few days before Christmas, which is not enough turnaround time to order a really nice, at least not then. Remember, this is 2017, to order a really nice gift for myself. So I was really sad about it, really upset. Meanwhile, if you remember, shortly before that, Caesar wanted to take a trip up to see his son because he didn't get to see his son over Thanksgiving. Okay, so that's a big deal. You didn't get to see your son over Thanksgiving, although Christmas is coming, and you could see him over Christmas. You're going to waste our weekend together for him to see his son. But me being upset over me not getting this gift for myself is not a big deal. Do you see what I'm saying? So notice for that. Pay attention to that. If there's something if you're sick and they're sick, do they make space of you being sick too? Or is it a competition? They're going to treat it like a competition. So that's the second thing you really need to pay attention to is not only do they lead with something going wrong in their life, but they also then will make everything around that wrong thing, that bad thing, a competition. And when you see that, you're seeing a narcissistic dynamic, because narcissists always are the only person who exists in the room. Your needs, your wants, your fears, your concerns, your tragedy doesn't count. All that counts is them and what's going on in their life. So pay attention to that. So don't trust people when you first meet them. That doesn't mean that you don't distrust people. So I'm not suggesting you walk into every relationship paranoid thinking, oh, this person's out to get me. No, I would rather have you just enter relationships from the standpoint of, I don't know this person, and I'm here to learn something about this person to see if this person is somebody who makes me feel safe and someone who makes me feel respected, and I feel like I can exist alongside of them. Like both of our needs are really, really important. That's how we should approach these relationships, as an observer. Exactly. Be an observer. Be curious. Don't be judgmental. Just be curious. Because judgmental will either pour shame on you or it will really pour criticism and judgment on others. And we don't want to do either of that. That doesn't help anybody to do that. So I really want to encourage you guys to be curious about whoever it is that you meet. I think the last thing I'm going to say about covert narcissists that really is important for us to pay attention to is that that they deal with their anger in a very indirect way. So normally an overt grandiose narcissist, when they get angry, it's like hot, heavy, loud, think of the pit bull, intense, they go for it. And that's not how covert narcissists deal with their anger. They tend to deal with their anger as like a slow burn or really cold, or they hold grudges and they get you back. A lot of them are passive, extremely passive aggressive. And I know that I have a long video kind of talking about all the passive aggressive behaviors that narcissists love to use. Pay attention to that. Watch out for that. Being late, not asking you for what they need, losing stuff on you or ruining your stuff. I mean, there's a whole host of things that they love to do that are really like nasty ways to get even with you. But what you'll notice with a covert narcissist is that they get even and they hold grudges, and they tend to be they get really cold and silent. They're more likely to use stonewalling than they are to just have an all-out fight with you and argue with you. So pay attention to that too. Is how have you seen them get upset? And what do? Like, for example, what Caesar used to do when we were on the road, oh yeah, they break your stuff and put it, oh yeah, they love to break your stuff. What he used to do on the road was whenever somebody didn't drive quite the way he liked, he would get in front of that person and then he would on purpose slow down or stop in front of them in the highway. He would slow down or stop in the highway, deliberately trying to provoke them. So pay attention to that. What happens when somebody disses them or makes a mistake around them, or maybe when somebody sort of slightly insults them, or maybe makes a joke? How do they get even? What do they do? Are they able to put it into perspective, or do they just sort of quietly wait to get even with that? I once heard, and I thought, I've never done this. I don't know if I could do this, but I think it's a great thing. So I'm going to pass along a little test that you can do. Like I said, it's really out of character for me, so I'm not for sure I could pull it off, but here's what I heard. And I think it's fascinating. Make up a story about yourself around something that's very sensitive, but not really. It's not actually true, okay? Like, for example, if I was to do it, and this is true, my nickname as a kid from my dad was Skeeter, because my dad said I was like a little mosquito that buzz-bombed around, okay? Did that bother me? I didn't care my dad named me Skeeter. I thought it was kind of cute. By the way, I never met and married a Jamaican. I don't know where people are getting that from. I went to a honeymoon in Jamaica. That's it. I did not marry a Jamaican. I don't know anything about Jamaicans except for every Jamaican I met in Jamaica were wonderful. So I'm really sorry that so many Jamaicans have gotten trashed on that one big video. That is so bizarre to me. I feel really, really bad. Okay, back to my test. So pick up something in your life and make it a big deal. It's not really a big deal, but I want you to pretend that it's a big deal. Like it would be like me acting like the name Skeeter is super offensive to me and it really hurt my feelings. I want you to tell this new person that you're testing this story. Yeah, you know what? My dad used to call me Skeeter. And he said it was because I buzz-bombed around like a mosquito. And you know, it really hurt my feelings. It made me feel like I wasn't okay, like there was something wrong with me. It made me feel super, super stupid. But please don't share this with anyone and never call me that name. I don't know why I needed to tell you. I just wanted to tell you this. That's how you would do it, okay? That's the setup. You've set this person up. Now, watch what happens. Watch what they do with that information. So a couple things you want to pay attention to. Does it get back to you from somebody else? That means they're gossiping. You don't want to be in a relationship with a gossip. They're not trustworthy. But what's worse is a covert narcissist will eventually slip and call you that. They'll slip and call you that. Or and then they'll act like, why are you so upset? Or they'll say they don't remember that you said don't use that name. But they'll use it against you as a way to get even. This is how it showed up in my life. I'm going to tell you something about myself, and I often have to check. I spill stuff on myself. I'm autistic, and one of the signs of my autism is I'm clumsy. And when it comes to food, I am terribly clumsy, and I often end up with food on my shirt. So I've learned, by the way, how to get stains out of a shirt to save my shirt, so I'm not always buying more shirts. But anyway, I often spilled stuff, and I told Caesar that I did that. In fact, I got teased for it. growing up. I got teased for it. It hurt deeply that they couldn't, my family picked on me about it, said they couldn't trust me with food. I was always ruining my outfits. So I shared that with him, and I'll never forget one day, he walked through the bedroom and he'd spilt ketchup down his white shirt. And he looked at it, pulled it out, looked at me and said, I'm getting to be just like you. I got to watch out for that. I couldn't believe it. There it was. He used it against me. So pay attention to that, because people who are toxic, who are cruel, who lack empathy, who are sadistic, will flip this around and use those things in a critical moment to make sure to put you down, put you in your place, or make you feel bad. So watch what they do with private information that you've trusted them with. And that's why I'm saying give them a test of something that's meaningless so it actually doesn't hurt you. You know, if someone called me Skeeter, it's like, whatever, I don't care. But that about me spilling food on my clothing made me feel really bad. It's something I feel uncomfortable about, that I feel embarrassed about. So yeah, him using that was hurtful, and he knew it was going to be hurtful. So there's a little bit of the inside of a mind of a covert narcissist, some things about how to recognize them, why we often miss them initially, why their red flags are so hard to see. I really want you to get better at identifying this, because that way you save yourself, because they're the hardest group to spot. It's easy to spot the one who's the life of the party. It's easy to spot the one who's almost a hypochondriac, or they're excessively focused on their body or physicality. It's also easy to spot the player, the boy, the woman who's really like moving on men a lot. We can spot those groups easier. It's very hard though to pick the covert narcissist. They're super tough. All right, I promised I'd save you at least 20 minutes, so let's take your questions today. What are the things that you guys want to know about psychology? Maybe you want to know about healing from narcissistic abuse. Maybe you'd really like to know more about narcissists in general. I'm going to slow down and not talk so fast and take your questions. Yeah, Chrissy, I agree. There's tremendous guilt about staying with one when you know you're in a relationship with one. We just like to say that it's easy to leave. It is not easy to leave. Anybody who ever has been in a relationship, I liken it to be like the Lady and the Lion. Have you guys ever heard of the story of the Lady and the Lion, where it was a king with his princess, and he wanted to have the best suitor win the princess? And so they said, okay, one door leads to the tiger and one door leads to the lion, and you got to choose. One door leads to the tiger, another door leads to the lady. You pick the right door and you get to marry her and have a life with her. Well, in a relationship with a narcissist, it's like every door has a tiger behind it. Leaving feels like choosing the least painful tiger. They're going to make sure that whatever you do, they're going to make you pay for that. And it's really scary and hard. So leaving is not easy. It's never easy. Somebody just asked me a really good question. How do I stop caring about him? Yeah, I think that's a hard one, because often they pick people who are very, very sympathetic and supportive, and then we buy into their hard luck stories. Often these people do have really hard stories. What we all do. We all have a hard story, but it makes us feel bad, because sometimes they connect to us in a way that makes us feel like we want to be the one that heals them. So what I would really suggest that you notice is, do they treat you with the same respect and love and compassion that you treat them with? Are you getting that back? And why are you, here's the hard part, and this is the part that I struggled with, and you could probably see it in my story. I failed to ask myself, why was it important for me to show up really helpful to this person, and I did not show up equally helpful to myself? Why was I allowing myself to be mistreated while I was treating him so well? That's not good or right. So I would really urge all of us to make sure that we see ourselves as equally as important as this person. They don't deserve better care than you're giving yourself. And if they're not treating you kind and respectful and not open to making changes, and they're not feeling bad for you, then why are you being the only one? Why are you sacrificing yourself? This person, by the way, here's the other thing about their mindset. They're never going to appreciate the sacrifices you made. They're never going to appreciate that. They expect you to sacrifice yourself. They have an arrogance and entitlement, and they want you. They will literally, it's almost like, I wish I had a milk carton. They will literally like empty you out and squeeze you and then toss you and go on to the next person. They don't see you as a valuable person worthy of love and care and attention. Why is that okay? And I know it's hard to see that, but I want to tell you, anybody right now who's in a relationship really struggling with one, you probably have a trauma bond. And I highly recommend that you get help or coaching or join my support group for that, to break it, to realize that you are lovable, you are important, you are valuable, your needs matter. But yeah, you have a trauma bond, you're having a hard time because it feels so scary. If breaking it feels really hard. And you're struggling to know what's real and true because they're misleading you so profoundly and keeping you on that hook. And then on top of it, they're scaring you because you know whatever you do, they're going to make sure there's mutual mass destruction. They're very good at that. So I understand how scared and limited you feel. It is very draining, absolutely. All right. I'm reading. Yeah, so Linda asks, I was just told by my husband that he arranged an outing with our grandsons. He continues to say I can go if I want to, but he's going whether I go or not. How do I respond? I want to see my grandsons. So basically what I'm hearing from you, Linda, is that he's making this, you're not going to get to go see the kids unless you go. That's the only condition you're going to get to see the kids. He doesn't really care that you won't be able to see them if you don't go. And he's really putting you on the spot. Yeah, that's awful. I mean, you sound like you're pushed right into a corner here. So my question to you is, how badly do you want to see the grandsons? Badly enough for you to go, even though he's twisting your arm, for sure. And I think what I would do is maybe I wouldn't do anything around this incident, but I might deal with it differently in the future. And that is, I would really question why I'm in this relationship and what I'm going to do. And maybe I might even plan more strategically in the future how I can avoid this situation. Like the next time I know my grandsons are going to be in the area, can I get a jump on that and make my own plans before he makes the plans? I don't know. Here's one of the problems with narcissists. They're good at intimidating everybody. It's not that the victim, the partner, is the only victim. Everybody's a victim in that matrix, in that system. So chances are your daughter or son is also having a hard time saying no. So everybody's getting kind of like, for example, I heard of another situation, horrible situation, in which the narcissistic ex is now got his daughter to have her wedding at his house, forcing his ex to have to come to the house to see the wedding. They're just so good at arm twisting and manipulating and blackmailing everybody. So part of it is how do you get other people around you to also cooperate with you to stop that kind of intimidation and guilt tripping. You're right, mind your Zen. They also are really great at guilt tripping, very much so. Yeah, someone's asking about the specific types. I think the specific subtypes of narcissists are this, and I don't know if I can name them all off the top of my head, but there's the grandiose, the covert, which is also called the vulnerable narcissist. That's actually the real name is vulnerable narcissist, is a covert. Then there is the somatic narcissist, which is either sexual or they're usually having some kind of body problem, body issue, maybe an illness, or they're preoccupied with their appearance, excessively so. And they often have a lot of sexual escapades and have a lot of sex addictions. Then there's also the antagonistic, everything's conflictual around that individual. And then there's the hero type. This is the person who is the do-gooder, that is always out in front, involved with all these sort of charities and boards. And meanwhile, they're back at home and they're not that kind of nice, kind person at home. It's sort of like the ER doctor who's saving everybody, but then at home he's chewing out his own family, eating them up. So those are the 5 subtypes. Sometimes people think there's 7. Sometimes people say there's fewer than that, but they often are in those subtypes. That's a great question. What happens when a narcissist develops a disability? Do they tend to get worse? Have you heard of the term called a collapsed narcissist? Some narcissists go through something that's very ego deflating, very painful, and they can't be who they used to be. Imagine, for example, a grandiose sexual narcissist who somehow becomes handicapped, maybe is bound to a wheelchair. When you see a situation where they've lost a lot of their ego gratification, what derived their supply from, they can move into become more of a vulnerable or a covert narcissist. They can become like sort of a poor me, the worst person in the world. Like nobody has it as bad as they do. The thing is, here's the thing that's interesting is that the thought is people who have borderline personality disorder tend to get better as they age. Those symptoms tend to get milder as they get older. The problem with narcissists is that that's not the case. Narcissists don't tend to get easier going and milder as they get older. It just sort of, it converts how the focus is. Yeah, like you're saying, everybody suddenly now has to cater to them. So before, they walked in and they sort of commanded the room and everybody had to do what they want. Now they walk in and everybody's supposed to take care of them and supposed to cater to them and give up and sacrifice for them. They're always the center. They're always going to be the center, unfortunately. So it just kind of, it gets worse or it gets bad or stays bad in a different way. That's how I would say it. So can I give advice for dog whistling? And then what happens when love bombing doesn't work? Okay, so 2 separate questions in there. So dog whistling. Do you guys know what dog whistling is? Dog whistling is when a person brings up, a narcissist or somebody who's really toxic, brings up an issue that they have with you, and it's a private issue, and you have your own language about whatever it is. And when what they do is they'll bring it up publicly and maybe even compliment somebody else, but you know that they're really actually making a point about you. So I'm going to make a pretend situation up. Okay, so Caesar always loved to say that I packed a lot whenever we traveled, that I had to take everything with me. That actually is not the truth. I was the one that packed the technology. So yeah, of course, I had more stuff to take because I was packing whatever we needed for technology, which is, you know, anybody who's packed technology knows that it takes a lot of space. But he loved to say I was the packer and couldn't leave anything at home and make fun of me for that. So dog whistling would be this. Say we meet a relative of his who comes into town and they're with luggage and they packed really concisely, very neatly, very few luggage. And he would look at her, this person, and say, "Oh my, you're such a good packer." And then usually the person who's dog whistling will look at the person they're trying to hurt. They'll look at you and wonder if you if you got it because they're insulting you in front of this other person. That's what dog whistling is. It's like a dog whistle is only a sound that the dogs can hear. This is the same. It's only a term or a phrase or a statement that you understand, and it's done purposely to put you in a bad spot. So here's what not to do if that happens to you. If it happens to you, like that situation, do not react. Pretend it didn't happen. Act as if this person didn't insult you in front of the other person, because the point is they want you to react. They want you to like, well, she's not that good. I mean, I pack really good too. I mean, they want you to react. And you reacting then looks like you're the bad, weird, freaky person. So don't give them that satisfaction of reacting. You know it was a really crappy comment, and you know it was a passive-aggressive dig to hurt you on purpose. You know that. So please, but ignore it. Your best power is to ignore it and act like it didn't happen and act like you're not bothered by it, even when you are. Because you take the power away from them when you do that. You really literally disempower them in that moment. Also, you know, later, I'm not even for sure I'd bring it up ever, frankly. If you cease reacting to it and it ceases to get a rise out of you and it stops being a hot button, they may stop. Because the point of it is to make you look bad. That's what the whole thing is. It's a really crappy thing to do, done by someone who disrespects the crap out of you, who wants to harm you in front of other people and make you look bad. They're probably already smearing you. The smear campaign's probably already going. So just take it in as information to figure out what you're going to do about that relationship. Okay, love bombing that doesn't go well. What happens when love bomb doesn't work? I think they just maybe move on. I mean, they're not terribly, here's the problem, a problem for all of us. We want to think that the narcissist is invested in us, that they love you, that you really are the only person in the world and the one and the only. No, 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 no. You're replaceable. You're no more sophisticated. You're no more significant to them than this cup is. I can go get another one of these. This is not the only stainless steel cup in the world. If I want something like that, I'll go find it. So when the love bombing doesn't take, that just means you weren't a vulnerable enough victim, and they're going to go find another victim. Unfortunately, you're replaceable. So I don't see that as terribly I see that as you got lucky. They're going to move on. Okay, how do you deal with the idea that coverts don't do this intentionally? I was led to being their rescuer, but keep getting trashed and tossed out. Well, I think okay, let me back up for a second. Let's ask the bigger question. Do narcissists hurt us intentionally? Do they know what they're doing? I would say part of them do and part of them don't. So if you looked at the whole group, I would say half of the room knows what they're up to and it's intentional. I think the other half don't know what they're up to and they're just really good at it. And they're really very fragile people who can't stop being hurtful and harmful to other people. So I'm not for sure it's all intentional. But I think we can get better. This is the part that I really missed. We can get better at spotting when we don't feel safe and when we don't feel respected. And I think we need to stop tolerating relationships where we don't feel like we can be fully ourselves. I think that's how we save ourselves, is that when we feel that way, we need to get better at getting out of those relationships and saying, I just don't want to be invested in somebody who doesn't show up equally with a lot of skin in the game. So, yeah, I'm sorry that that's happened to you and that you're struggling with that. And I would then, that might be, for example, I would really urge you to join up for Healing Strong. Get into my Healing Strong 12-week group coaching. Let's figure out what's going on that you keep getting trashed and beat up on, because I would love to have that stop happening for you. So, this is a fascinating question. Jerry asked, what's the difference between a covert narcissist and a fearful avoidant? And do you think there are any big differences between the two? Absolutely. I think there is huge differences. Okay, you're making an assumption that all avoidant people could be narcissistic and that anxiously attached people are never narcissistic. I first of all don't agree with that. I do think that most narcissistic people tend to be more avoidant. I do agree with that, but I don't think that they're always avoidant. I think sometimes they can be anxiously attached too. But that's different. Anxiously attached. So what do I even mean by that? An anxiously attached person has had early childhood experiences of parents, we're talking about caregivers, who are not available, who have disappointed them and let them down, and are very hard to engage in a relationship. So they have learned to anticipate rejection and abandonment. And so as a result, they usually tend to be super hyper independent and go alone a lot, and they struggle needing anybody because they're afraid if they need somebody, they're going to be let down again. So that's what that's what an avoidantly attached person assumes. Okay, let me talk about anxiously attached. Anxiously attached person is somebody who's had a parent or parents who are needy, insecure, who sort of need a lot of like hand-holding and involvement to keep them close. And so they find any separation really fearful. So this is a person who checks in a lot, who does a lot of caregiving, who tends to like go out and do a lot of work keeping that person invested. They keep that parent fluffed up and healthy. So an anxiously attached person fusses over people and they don't like separation, and they get anxious when somebody kind of disappears because they get afraid something bad's going to happen. Okay, so the avoidant has learned to go it alone, and the anxious person has learned to really serve as a way to keep people healthy. Narcissists can be in any of those groups. And there's another group called disorganized. A disorganized one is, or an ambivalently attached person, I think that's also called fearfully avoidant attached, is a person who's learned that sometimes people show up and then sometimes people disappoint you, that you can never really trust anybody because they're inconsistent. So you might think of the parent who's an addict. This parent might have periods where they're sober and things are great, and then they fall back off the wagon and things go to pieces, and then they've learned you can't trust people because people don't consistently show up. So they just sort of like, they kind of are wary and careful, and they never really get too invested because it all can go wrong. I think it's dangerous to use different theories to understand narcissists, because here's how I understand narcissists. Narcissists are people who have a series of internal weaknesses. They're excessively self-absorbed, they struggle with reflection, and they are not empathic, and they think that there's something unusually special and different about them compared to everybody else, so that the rules don't apply to them. Yes, they can really be anxious about not wanting to lose people. And yes, they can be really hyper independent and never need anybody. And yes, they can also sometimes never trust. By the way, they never trust. They don't trust anybody ever anyway. Does that make them fearfully avoidant? I don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is I think that we kind of need to keep the categories separate, unfortunately. I think it gets tricky when we try to apply these really global assessments that really were like used to identify children's attachment styles onto adult relationships. Because here's the thing, by the way, I was in a research project for 2 years on attachment style. So I was one of their participants. And they followed, and what I found, they gave me the results, which was fascinating. I found that my attachment style depended on the person and depended on the situation, and it changed a lot. So in other words, I wasn't always avoidant, and I wasn't always anxious, and I wasn't always fearfully anxious or fearfully avoidant. That sometimes it kind of came and went depending on the situation. Whereas narcissism does not change. Narcissism is a perpetual state. It's a disorder. It's a state of personality. This person has inherent weaknesses in their personality. I don't know if I helped make that clear or if I just made it more confusing, but that's some of my thoughts about it. So I do know that I have an interview coming up on breaking free from narcissistic abuse. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the fact that I got a podcast. By the way, we're ranking in the top 100 in mental health in the United States on Apple. So today we're sitting at the position of 60th out of everybody in the whole country in mental health is breaking free from narcissistic abuse. Highly recommend that you check it out. But I have Dr. Erin Leonard is coming on as a guest in September, and she's going to be talking about avoidant attachment styles and narcissism. So she probably would disagree with me, actually. I know she would disagree with me. So if you want to learn more about that, please watch the program. It's every Monday we drop the new episode. This week is on, are we overusing the term narcissist and narcissism? So, yeah, I tend to be kind of anxiously avoidant as well. I'm a fearful avoidant person. But I also have a lot of secure relationships. So, that's the good thing about attachment theory is it believes in healing, that you can heal. So I love that about that. All right, other questions for me today. I got a couple more minutes before I have to wrap it up and close it up today. And I love that you guys listen to Breaking Free. Somebody asked, here's a question. Can a malignant narcissist also be covert? Absolutely. Absolutely. So what do we mean by that? A malignant narcissist, that was his other subtype I didn't mention. A malignant narcissist is a narcissist who really is bound on destruction of everybody. Really bent on, think of the sociopath or psychopath with narcissistic traits. They're really kind of a blending of both. They break the law. They're liars. They're really hurtful people. But yeah, they can certainly be covert, especially in the beginning. Mine is a narcissistic sociopath. Absolutely. He's covert though. There was nothing about my ex that was grandiose he dressed carefully and he was a perfectionist and he always made sure he presented well. Definitely had the good guy syndrome going for him, but he wasn't out just trashing people. He was very carefully curating his reputation. And that was actually, when I got to know him super well, I got to realize that was the leverage. The leverage was if I threatened to ruin his relationships, then I could make him do what I want. Here's an example. When we were wrapping up the vacation rental business and he was no longer co-owner, my property manager accidentally deposited $1,000 into his account, in his bank account. And it belonged to the company, not to him, and certainly he wasn't going to get any more money. And he said to me, why can't I just keep it? I want more money from you anyway. Can't I keep the $1,000? So this is what I said, knowing that the leverage was he really wanted a curated identity or reputation. He wanted a curated reputation. That's what an image. That's the word I was looking for, a curated image. So I said to him, I have let the property manager, I'm going to verify a second. So this is how I dealt with it. I told Caesar, the property manager, who's a man, I think that mattered because he cared more about what men thought than women. Because I think he was a misogynist, very much so. I said, the property manager knows that $1,000 belongs to the company, not to you. And if you do not return it, I'm telling the property manager that you stole from the company and you're stealing from me. I wrote that. And you know what? The money got moved. It went into the right accounts. So I used it against him. I threatened him, and I used his need to be, his need to be seen in good light against him. So how do you heal if you have narcissism? I'm going to take, this is one of the second to the last questions, and then the rolling panic attacks. Can you tell me what you mean by rolling panic attacks? I think I know what you mean, but I'm not for sure I know what you mean. So describe that for me, Brandy, what you're struggling with. Yeah, they don't, yeah, oh, actually, I'll answer 3 questions. Did you actually say that they don't always know or mean to hurt people? What I meant was they don't always intentionally go about it cold-bloodedly. That's what I mean. Do they know they're being hurtful or what they're saying is unkind? Yeah, of course they do. I mean, if they like attack you or accuse you of something, yeah, they know they're being little creeps about it. Yes, they know that. But do they intentionally try to always gaslight? Are they intentionally always being passive aggressive? Sometimes they're being defensive about it, meaning like they feel under attack, even though you're not attacking them. I'm not saying you are, but even they feel like they're under attack, so they're getting even or protecting themselves. That's what I mean. I'm not, but do they know it's bad? Of course they know it's bad. Of course they know lying is bad. But sometimes they see that as, well, you're hurting me, so I'm just taking care, protecting myself. Okay, back to the other question. If you're somebody who if you think you have narcissistic traits or you're a narcissist, I highly recommend that you look for a therapist with expertise in working with personality disorders. There are people who specialize in working with that, with people with personality disorders. You can learn, if you guys follow Mental Healness, Lee Hammock, you can learn how to curb your tendency to want to get even, to be highly defensive, to be deceptive, to fear people getting to know you. You can learn how to curb that. You can also learn how to develop empathy, called cognitive empathy. So it is possible to have somebody work with you and call you whenever you're being manipulative or exploitive, but it takes a certain type of training to be able to do that really, really well. And I would recommend that you go to some place like Psychology Today. I don't know why I say Psych Central. Go to some place like Psychology Today, put in working with personality disorders to find out how to get more regulated. I do think DBT helps, but I don't think it's the full answer, but I do think it can be useful. Yeah, Muriel, that's a good question. It's more about dysregulation, not just only of large emotions, but all emotions. Okay, so Brandy, did you say more about your rolling panic attacks? I have a mini course called How to Calm an Overactive Mind. It's a $9.99 course, and if you it teaches you how to use a stop distraction, and then it teaches you how to stop the process, use deep breathing, and then change your thinking to regain your control over what's happening internally. I would wonder if it would be helpful for you. You can find it. I don't know if you can find it on my website or not, but if you DM me, Brandy, DM me, and I'll send you the link to it. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. Okay, I'm trying to, anything else that I missed before I wrap it up today? I don't know if you guys know, but I have a membership, and the Toxic Free Relationship Club at the higher level, $75 a month. We meet every week for live group coaching, and we meet at 5:30 Central Standard Time. So I'm getting ready to head over there to talk to that group, which I love that group. So you get community support, access to a large library of exclusive videos, my weekly newsletter with exclusive interview that's always available on that from the podcast, and as well as you get direct access to me. And we also do a book club. So if you guys are really looking for more help, more support, and you really like to get a lot more access to me, more direct input with other people, get live group coaching every week, please consider becoming a part of the Toxic Free Relationship Club. And by the way, I always offer financial assistance. So if you say $75 a month, but you think about it, that's 4 weeks of group coaching for the cost of $75. But if you can't afford that, contact me directly. We'll make a private arrangement so that it's affordable for you. So Jerry, I missed the situation that you're talking about, unfortunately. Oh, you asked a question about my course, Obi? I missed that too. What was the question that you asked? Let me see if I can find it. I love that you're green so I can find you easily. That means you're a subscriber on YouTube. Thank you for that. Oh, you like the idea of my course, but it feels too late for UK time? It's at 3 to 4 o'clock. So for you, it would be like 9 o'clock, I think. If you're 6 hours ahead of me, maybe, or 5 hours, it'd be either 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock your time. I had somebody who is in, who is, who is, who was able to make it every week. So it also, we also have it video replay. So if you miss a week, you can always catch up with that replay. All right, you guys, it's been so wonderful hanging out with you today. I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll be back here next Tuesday. And next Tuesday, we're going to talk about when you can't leave, what to do when it feels wrong to leave, or you're scared to leave, or you're feeling like threatened to leave. Yeah, so we'll talk about that, because a lot of us are in those situations. I want you to know that there's no shame. This is a common problem, like you may have heard, that it takes an average of 7 times of leaving before we can actually, like, it sticks. So I want you to know that. Yeah. All right, you guys, so much. I will see you next week. Thank you for being here this week.